Let's talk about what's happening today in the courts, because the executive order is going to be heard by these 3 judges in the Ninth Circuit. What do you think will happen? Will they rule in the president's favor, or will they send it to the Supreme Court?
Well, it's an interesting makeup. We have one Obama judge, we have one Clinton judge, and we have one George W. Bush judge. So one judge sits in Hawaii. The case will be heard in San Francisco. And remember, the case is not a case on the merits of whether the ban is constitutional. The case only involves the stay that was put into effect, the emergency stay that was granted by the lower court, the district court, last week. So the appellate court has to look at 2 things. Well, a couple of things, but 2 things are the most important. What is the likelihood of success on the merits for the petitioners? Is it likely that this ban will be overturned as unconstitutional or contrary to statutory interpretation? And number 2, the other point is there irreparable harm that will be done to either Minnesota and I believe Washington State is the other state. So Minnesota and Washington State are the litigants. Now, I think those 2 hurdles are very difficult to clear, both the likelihood of success on the merits, given what we know about Section 1182, giving the president broad authority, and the irreparable harm that is very difficult to remedy. Irreparable harm to Minnesota and to Washington State, I don't think either of those 2 standards are met. You could also argue, guys, I know it's getting a little legalese here, you could also argue that the states themselves do not have standing to bring this case as states against the Trump administration. So those are the 3 things that they were briefed in the Justice Department's brief. They'll be argued. But I have a feeling they're probably not going to get relief from the Ninth Circuit. This will go to the Supreme Court, and Lord knows what will happen there.
But, Laura, let's take a scenario where the Ninth District Court says, no, the stay, we can't do it, and goes to the Supreme Court, it's 4-4, so it goes back to what the Ninth says. Having said that, it doesn't stop the administration from putting together their extreme vetting program and criteria and putting it in place in those 7 countries. It just stops the pause, correct?
Correct. And so I was talking to a couple of my former Supreme Court clerk colleagues last night on the phone, and we were thinking maybe this is a time for repeal and replace of the immigration pause. Maybe you redo that and maybe make it a little bit more specific. The president should come out, I think, and make the case for why this is in the nation's interest. He didn't do that. And I think a lot more people would be open to this idea. You might even get a few Democrats on your side. If the president goes to the nation and say, this is why this is important. We welcome immigrants. Of course, most Muslims around the world are welcome here. We welcome people from all over the globe. But this is about you and your safety. And let's get this right before we move forward. I think that would be a great way. That would make the case moot. In other words, the case would lose all standing because there really would be no case anymore. So that's something I would think about if I were advising the president legally on this.
Sure. And, of course, people shouldn't be surprised. President Trump promised during the campaign he was going to crack down on immigration. He also talked, and you know this well because you were